I do roofing and restoration. My dad sold wood molding. My uncle replaced windshields. And what I felt early on was that what my first piece of advice to anyone who's trying to live an intentional life who's not in the job of their dreams is, could my boss have done anything to get me motivated to sell more? If so, what? What could I have done for myself? And I was always just trying to learn. And I think that the first piece of advice I'd give anyone at any stage of their career is, and what I found is, like, for me to improve my way of being, I first have to, and if you don't have that, starting a business is just a nightmare beyond comprehension. Because if you want to have self-respect, do things you respect. Like, at some point, I'm proud of me, but the process to get there was.
When I was young, I learned two great things from this experience of having a dad who made a couple $100,000 a year. And the first lesson was,
welcome to the Intentional Way, where literally every moment is a step towards purposeful living. I'm Bryan Hatch, here to explore the power of intention with you. Learn from our guests who embody intentionality. I'm glad you're here with me. Let's get started. Welcome everybody to another episode of The Intentional Way. I'm your host, Bryan Hatch. And today I'm going to introduce our guest a little differently. You can look this guy up. I really enjoyed looking him up and trying to find all the little tidbits of him online. You can find in his LinkedIn bio that he has a PhD in tetherball. And I'm just so stoked that I get a PhD in tetherball on the show today.
Important.
But honestly, guest Jason Jarvis, he is a business owner of multiple businesses. Slate Restoration is one of those. He has roofing companies, has done a lot of cool things out there. Also has an organization called Better, Faster, Younger. And Jason, I've been looking forward to this longer than you probably know. I loved the minute I saw you. The very first time I met you was in the back of a dark Suburban.
Oh, wow. That's usually how a court proceeding begins. I don't know how this ends.
But I remember we were driving from whatever airport it was to up to Whistler, and it was a couple hours. And I had such a fun time talking with you. You and I were, I don't know, I think we're in the back seat of that chatting about business and such. And I thought, man, I love this guy from the very first get-go. And I'm so happy to have you on here today, man.
Well, I'm flattered. I'm glad to be here. I feel like everyone lies about something on LinkedIn. So my one lie, I try to keep it mostly down the middle, but I do not actually have a PhD in tetherball. But everything else on there, I think, is verifiably true. We'll see.
I like it. There were some other things that I found interesting as I poked around. One way I do like to start these episodes is tell us something that people don't know about you. They all know now that you're a tetherball enthusiast, but tell us something that people wouldn't be able to find about you.
Gosh, what a good question. One thing that's meaningful that people may not know about me is every year with my business partner, we do an activity where we imagine it's my 50th birthday party. And what we do is we kind of set it up like, okay, it's your 50th birthday. Who's in the room? Where are you? You know, who's there? And then it's like, what do you feel? Like, you kind of imagine it's really is your 50th birthday and you say, what do you feel? How do you hope to feel? And then let's imagine that my wife, for me, says, hey, can I get everyone's attention before we cut the cake? I'd like for each of us here to go around the room and share what Jason has meant to them in their life. And I do this activity every year. And about 2 years ago, I had this really powerful spiritual experience where all of a sudden in this room that I've imagined a million times, there was this whole slew of new people. It was this big group of like 30 somethings at my 50th birthday. And I'm 39 now. So I'd make them 20 something now. And it just became overwhelmingly clear to me that, like, I have this huge intention to just help young people figure out what they want to do with their lives. I kind of frame it through business. I just teach a free entrepreneurship class. I teach a early morning Bible study class to sophomores in high school. But one thing people may not know about me is, like, they might know that I do a lot of mentoring to young people, but they don't know that I'm doing it literally because it's just like the most fun thing in the whole world. And it's like the thing that doesn't feel like work. I think the nicest thing, the best thing that people may not know about me is that, like, I'll just talk to people about what they want to do with their careers for free 10 hours a day, every day for the rest of my life. And that I really just enjoy. People are always like, hey, I don't want to bug you, or hey, I'm sure you're busy, but, and I'm like, dude, I'm like a kid in a candy store. So one thing people may not know about me is that is not my business. It's just my hobby. And it just kind of lights me up and brings me joy.
That's awesome. Where did that idea start from to help young people? It sounds like specifically teenagers around that.
Yeah, it was always teenagers, and it's kind of gotten to like college grad, early 20 age, because like that age seems to be ready to take action in a way that's really fun to serve as well. But I think I used to say, well, I had great mentors, so I wanted to pay it forward. And that is true. Like my dad was an incredible mentor, like took me on sales calls, before I started kindergarten. It's like my first memories of being alive is being on sales calls. And I knew the difference. I knew how to read a P&L at 12. You know what I mean? I knew what our mortgage was. Like my dad always just told me stuff. And so I did have great mentors, but really I grew up, with all my buddies' dads. They were cool and successful and Boy Scout leaders and whatever, cool and successful. And there was this sort of like modesty thing where they didn't want to talk about where their success was. Like, they didn't want to talk about it. I couldn't get them to open up. And I was just like, when you play that game, like if you could have a superpower, would you rather fly or be invisible? Like, I just want to know people's deal, man. Like, that's the superpower I want. Is like, what's that guy's deal? Is he rich? Is he fake rich? Is he cool? Is he not cool? Like, I just always wanted to know, like, the scoutmaster's got this sick house. And I'm like, what's his deal? What's he do for a living? How much does that make? And no one ever told me, or I never figured out how to ask. It felt like impolite. And so I just decided when I got older, man, like I may not be the smartest, I may not be the richest, but I will be the most open, bro. So like if somebody wants to know, I'm gonna tell them. So I guess I'm just trying to give the gift that I wanted, which is like, okay, I'm 20 something or 16 or whatever age, and I'm here at the beginning of the journey. And I knew all these guys at the end of the journey. And I'm like, what's in the middle, man? How does this come together? And so I guess I don't know if anyone else has that same curiosity as me, but if they do, I'm gonna be there to tell them whatever I can tell them.
When I was a young teenager, I thought I wanted to just go knock on all the multi-million-dollar houses that I found and just ask them that same question. I've seen some people do it on YouTube now that are older, but back then I was like, dude, I just want to know how they did it. That's really cool, though. Why do you think that you pursuing that? Well, maybe I should rephrase that. Do you think that doing that, like asking those questions or wanting to ask those questions as a young kid, made it easier for you to find success?
Yeah, I'd like to think I would have found it even. That's why I named my little group Better, Faster, Younger, is because, like, yeah, I meet all these kids and I'm like, they, might look up to me for whatever reason. I'm like, dude, you are so obviously cooler than me, smarter than me, more ambitious than me. The only thing I have going is that, like, my parents got down before your parents did, and I just happen to be older. That's it. Like, I see these 24-year-olds and I'm like, you're gonna be awesome. Or I'll meet a 15-year-old who's bright and ambitious. And I'm like, dude, if we were both 39, you'd be so much richer, cooler, smarter, more interesting than me. I just happen to be older. And so I just love, I think that we get where we get in life, based on who we are and who we try to be. But I just think that I could have maybe, anytime I met a good mentor, they just, as my buddy Mitch Whiting says, just turn decades into days. Like they just give you insight to things that maybe I would have uncovered on my own, but my good mentors in my life helped me get wherever I was going just faster. And that's fun for me to be like, one gift I have is like, I do see these young kids as like total peers. I'm like, these guys are awesome. Like if we were both in high school, they'd be way too cool to be my friend. Like, but it's just so fun to be like, I just see them like killer 40-year-olds that just haven't had time to mature all the way yet. So I just love feeding into them. I don't think that I'm doing anything special. I just selfishly just want to be I just want to be on the sidelines with my pom-poms, just cheering them on. And if I can call in a play from the sideline or give them a tip on what to do, like it's just fun to be a part of. But I just find these kids that are so full of ambition and talent and maybe just don't totally know what the blueprint is. And I'm like, I'm not that smart, but I can tell you a few things. It's just kind of fun.
That seems very meaningful as someone in your position that's helping. Now, if you've been working with a lot of these teenagers and then maybe college grads in that age group, what do you think makes a difference? Because I've heard from so many people that like there's lazy generation, that they're not as motivated, they're not. And then I see gems of human beings at that age group are like, wow. So what makes the difference between these ones that maybe follow you or want to follow into what you're doing versus the ones that are just like, I'm just going to focus my life on social media? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think these kids are great. And maybe it's a self-selecting group that might seek me out to ask me questions. But I honestly think that they can spot BS really quickly. So it's almost like they're more clear on what they don't believe in than what they do believe in, or what they're not aiming for than what they are aiming for. Like I meet all these young people that are like, college is a scam. And I'm like, totally, bro. I'm totally with you. And they're like, but then it's like, so now what? Are you going to just chat GPT your homework and be a moron your whole life? What does it mean Now that you've identified what doesn't work, they're better at identifying what they don't want to be than what they do want to be. And so I think what they lack is a positive vision for themselves. And it's just easier to break things than to build things. And so they can see the hypocrisy or the stupidity in things that aren't worth their time or effort. But you can sort of critique your way into oblivion and have no positive vision for your life. So I think what they're open to, and maybe someone like Jordan Peterson would be a leader on this, who's just like, you got to give them a vision, you got to give them a target, you got to give them something to aim for. That's why this 50th birthday activity has been so powerful for me the last 12 years of my life, is it just gives me something to aim at. And so I found with these kids, it's like, here's who they are, and I get a sense of what they stand for and don't stand for. And then they have some vague idea that they'd like to have a good life or money or success, like some vague positive outcome. But like they just don't. The world has changed so freaking fast. I don't think they can even quite figure out what it is that'll take them from A to B. And that for me, I did a strengths profile on myself a few months ago. And that for me is all my strengths lie in puzzling out strategy, custom tailored to an individual. So I love being like, who are you? What's your story? What do you want? Let's start with who you are. Let's follow up with what you want. And then let's just get in the middle and just see what we cook up, man. So they're very receptive. I think the ones that look like apathetic or disconnected or cynical are more just have no idea. I tell people sometimes, I've had times in my life where I'm like, I will run full speed in any direction all day. I just don't know where I'm going. It's not a lack of energy or motivation. I don't know how to play football. Like I'm on the field, I'm tackling my own player, like I'm kicking the ball and I'm out there very enthusiastic. I see these kids as like absolutely willing, but don't really know what are they aiming at in their careers. AI is weird. The world's weird. The internet's weird. It's weird. They just can't quite figure out where to go and what to do, but they want to know where to go and what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Now, help us put our feet on the ground. I think that this is your experience, what you've seen and what you've experienced with these youth, if I call them that, young people. You're getting old when you start calling people young people.
I know.
But tell us your path. Like, how did you create success in your world? If you were on all these sales calls as a kid, as you were doing all these things with your dad, what was your path? How did you get there?
I'm so grateful. Thanks for asking. I'm so grateful for the way that my dad raised me, combined with just, I guess, the way my brain was processing the world, is that like I never got caught up in what I wanted to do. My dad had a boring business. He sold wood molding out of a giant warehouse to home builders. And my uncle, who I looked up to, had a windshield replacement company. And so he replaced windshields. And so they're both what Tom Stanley would call dull, normal businesses. And as I got older and read that book, I was like, yo, like this is the secret here. Like, for those unfamiliar, it's like Tom Stanley did this huge study of millionaires and just found out that the most common story of who a millionaire was back when this book was written, it actually meant something to be a millionaire, right? It was like pre-inflation. Like if being a millionaire was legit, it was just your neighbor. It was just your next door neighbor at a scrap metal company or a plumbing company, or, you know what I mean? I do roofing and restoration. My dad sold wood molding. My uncle replaced windshields. I just got off the phone with a friend who had literally a trash company. And what I felt early on was that like, I like people, I like building stuff. I want to be the best boss people have ever had. I want to be the easiest vendor people have ever dealt. I just wanted to like have a company that like I was proud of. I never had nobler ambitions than just like to be a net positive to society. I don't need to be a brain surgeon. I just want to sell something I'd sell my mom. And then from there, I'll just build a team. And the beauty will be in the team. Like I'll work with people I like and I'll treat them good and I'll treat our customers right. And I'll be proud of that we're honest. And so I never wasted any time being like, ooh, this would be cool. This business would be cool. Like, oh, I should do this. I'm going to do sports marketing. It's like, I just was like, I'm going to do something dumb and boring, but it's going to have human beings in it. And guess what? My dad was home to coach my basketball team and he took his clients golfing on the weekend. The company paid for the golf and like, had a dope life in a really boring business. So I always aimed at like, I had enough self-esteem to think I could be successful, but not enough self-esteem to think I'm going to be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys or invented the newest social media app. So I just aimed right for that like high middle of like really successful in a really uninteresting field. And that's just been like, I have an endless amount of a boundless enthusiasm for the power of just like boring service businesses that serve the community. They're just the greatest things in the whole world, if you ask me.
How old were you when you had some sense of this? Because Like hindsight is 2020. It sounds super
Yeah.
prolific coming out of your mouth. But at what point you're like, yeah, no, I'm cool with having a boarding business. That 15, 18, where are you at?
Yeah. So I was just kind of immersed in my dad's boring business, and I loved it and he loved it. And I just knew that he loved his employees. He had cool employees, and his employees thought, that makes me emotional, but I can point to 10 people whose lives are so much better because they took a job from my dad fresh out of college or after an LDS mission. And he just trained them up and set them free, and trained them up and set them free. And they're out in the world doing great stuff. So I just was like, this is cool, man. So I come back from my LDS mission and I'm like, I'm not doing the freaking Nepo baby. I'm not working for my dad. My dad wanted me to work for him. I'm like, Dad, like, you want me to work for you. Your number one complaint about the business, his only complaint about the business, is that his partner's dumb sons worked in it and they're all losers. And he couldn't fire them because they were in the sun. I'm like, why are you trying to ruin my life, bro? So I just was like, can't work for my dad, but I want to do something like what my dad does. And so I just came back and got a sales job, to try to lay out some principles, right? If I'm trying to lay out a blueprint, right? A is a good kid with ambition and no idea what they want to do. And point B is like, at 40, I have a great life. Like the in between was like, I just took a sales job so I could just figure it out. And I paid my way through school. Came back from my LDS mission right as the recession hit. And I was like, Dad, did you save any money for my college education? He's like, no, I just figured I'd always make money. And I'm like, gosh, you went broke right as I needed some money from you, man. What a bummer. But at 21, I'm like, well, I guess I'm on my own. So I paid my way through Mason Community College and then ASU, and I just got a sales gig and started working the sales gig.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this episode, please subscribe, follow, and download our episode. Your support allows us to bring more intentional guests just like this, and it means the world to us. Now, let's get back to the episode.
And I guess what I'd say is, what my first piece of advice to anyone who's trying to live an intentional life who's not in the job of their dreams is like, I couldn't have articulated this at 21, but I always was of two minds at any job I had. There was always me doing the job. And then there's this second me that I had to describe as like a scientist in a white lab coat with a clipboard, like interested, observing me and observing all the things going on. So I remember working in my dad's warehouse for $5 an hour, which was below minimum wage. And I was like, when I got older, I'm like, Dad, how did you, that was illegal. Like, how did you pay me $5? Minimum wage is $5.35. He's like, oh, you were never on the books. Like I just paid you out of my own money. Like, he's like, you were so worthless. You weren't worth the $5 an hour we paid you. So I went to my partner and said, can I just let my son feel like he's doing something? He can wake up early and do manual labor. I'll just pay him myself. If he breaks something, I'll fix it. So, but even at that $5 an hour job, I'm sweeping in the warehouse and I would just kind of go, how do I feel right now? Like, am I motivated? Am I not motivated? What would motivate me? What motivates these other people? And I was just always curious because I always had this idea that one day, some way, somehow, I want to have a business where I'm at the top and not the bottom of the org chart. So I kind of got this sense, luckily, early on that like, hey, if I do this right, this will be the last time I'm ever at the bottom of the org chart. And so this is my only chance to really get a sense of what it's like down here. It sucks. What could make it suck less? Because I'm probably gonna have a business where somebody's job sucks. But I've already said that whatever my business is, I want everyone to love it and to add value and to feel. So I'm like, what could Phil Waite, my boss, and Jesus, my other boss, possibly do for me that would give this job meaning and value? And I just kind of explore that as I'm sweeping. But as I was sweeping, I'd also be like, is this worth more or less than $5 an hour? Because if it's worth more, I'm getting screwed. And if it's worth less, then this is dishonest to even take the $5. And so I'm like, I learned early on, I got to have a sales job where I get a commission. So I get back from my mission, I get a sales job, it's commission, at least feels fair. And now I get to go out and experiment with a whole bunch of other things, which is, why do people say yes when I sell? Why do people say no? What happens on days when I get Taco Bell to the drive-thru and then never leave the parking lot for 2 hours? Why didn't I leave the parking lot for 2 hours? Could my boss have done anything to get me motivated to sell more? If so, what? What could I have done for myself? And I was always just trying to learn. And I think that the first piece of advice I'd give anyone at any stage of their career is like, stop trying to figure out what you want to do and start figuring out who you'd have to be to really crush something. And then the opportunities will show up. You know what I mean? If I told you that if you said, hey, how did you meet your wife? And I'm like, oh, funny story. We're at McDonald's and I fell in the ball pit and she was there. And then I said something like, if I told you some stupid story about where I met my wife and you thought my wife was like a total catch, only a moron would be like, well, I got to get to the ball pit. Like, where's the, like, that would be insane, right? Like, that'd be the dumbest thing in the world. And yet people say, oh man, person X, your life is cool. How did you get into this business? And like, who cares how they got? That's not the point. That's the ball pit. Who would you have to be to have a beautiful girl want to marry you is the obvious question. Because I could introduce some loser to 100 beautiful women and he's going to get 100 rejections. I had a friend in high school who never asked a girl out because he was cute and nice and polite and spiritual and hardworking. And every mom in a 20-mile radius was, like in the Hunger Games to try to get my buddy Brenner to take their daughter out. Because who he was drew in opportunity. You know what I mean? There's no career, no industry so special that you can be a loser and still crush it. And there's no industry so bad that the top 1% isn't just having the time of their lives and making a ton of money. And so I guess I just got into that first job and just tried to get a little tiny bit smarter every day. And eventually I got smart enough that people started to say, hey, what do you, guy I went to high school with, hey, what are you doing again? Like, we ran into each other at a party and we're talking. He's like, Jason seems thoughtful. And so then he wants to recruit me into his business. And so I go from one job to a better job. And then I meet people in that business and all my customers are like, hey, you're selling me X. We also buy Y and Z, but we don't like the guy who sells us Y or Z. And I'm like, well, maybe I can go start a business doing Y or Z with this newfound customer base that likes me. And, I just puzzled my way through it in a way that's, completely unduplicatable and completely duplicatable at the same time. Like, anybody out there can do the exact same thing in a totally different way. And a moron will think it's luck or nepotism or, good network. But it's like, everyone's got a network. I don't call the losers in my network, someone rich and awesome who's desperately looking for an amazing employee. If you're awesome, bro, that guy will call you. And that's not luck. It's just being great, getting a little bit better each day and looking for the opportunity, the beauty in the mundane, the wisdom in the ordinary. Like, how do you get into the nooks and crannies of these jobs you don't like and really let it serve you and make you smarter? And if you can just get a little smarter, then the next best thing will show up and the next best thing will show up. And you'll just kind of claw your way up till you got something you really like one way or another.
Yeah. When did you start? You started Slate Restoration or how?
Yeah, in 2013.
2013. You were how old at the time?
So the mechanics of it were like, I was working at auto glass company for my uncle, 100% commission. And then guy I went to college with and high school with, it's like, hey, we need a good salesman. And we actually need someone who can sell to these clients that you're selling to. So he offered me a job and I was 1099 there. And then from there, they had offered me some ownership if I hit some sales goals. And as I got closer to my sales goals, they kind of balked and said, never mind, we don't want to give you the ownership. And in their defense, they were probably right. They gave me just a hell of a deal. And because they were tiny and they're like, Jason knows how to get sales. We need sales. Give him whatever he wants. And then as they got smarter, they're like, oh, that's way too much. And they're probably right. Bless their hearts. So they just said, never mind. And I said, well, if you're out on the ownership, I'm out on this job. But it ended up being this great experience because I kind of got to practice doing this job. And then they set me free. And I didn't take any of their pre-existing clients. And I just took the ones I brought in with me and I brought them out with me. And they just sold for $25 million last year. So they're going to be okay. And I'm okay. And everybody won. And I just kind of stumbled my way into having my own thing.
That's awesome. So I love that you say that it's not necessarily the how. And the fact that if anybody else wanted to go find a hot wife going to McDonald's ball pit, that's not the way to do it. I love that. So how...
And everybody would know that. But yet in business, they just want to copy whatever the coolest, richest guy they know does. And it's just it's a poor strategy. It's not the smartest thing to do.
I find it interesting because you're right. People do that all the time. They will copy what you're doing, but they're doing it for the wrong reasons. They're doing it because they want your outcome, but they're not who you are and they're not operating how you are. And so it feels hollow. It feels super hollow. People do this all the time.
And I think that the gift I want to give these young people I talk to, but also my business partners now, I've expanded. I went from having Slate was my only business for 12 years. In the last year and a half, I've started 3 more. They each have a junior partner who's 30 and bright, and they're all doing amazing. But what I would like to help anybody I talk to understand is like, what's the framework, the principle behind it? The principle behind it for me, if I want to get more specific for what I love, is like, find a boring business and then go be a great person in that space until an opportunity pops up and another one and another one. And I think it's much more about who you're being than where you are. But I do tell people in particular, I think that these boring businesses are really great. I think that if you're just a good person who tells the truth and wants to do right by people, there's certain businesses that just don't reward that. Like I think to be an investment banker, being a good person is at best neutral to the goal of being great at investment banking and possibly detrimental, you know? Like I've read some books, bro. You gotta dump a bad stock on some, Japanese retirement fund before they realize that it's not great. Like, thinking of The Big Short and all the gnarly things that happen. I think you can be a terrible person and be a great accountant, or you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of businesses where it's not. I think in door-to-door sales, it's actually might be, it might cost you money to be a good person. But in these service businesses, if you have a business that performs a service in your community, then the better person you are, the more the community embraces you over time, the more your employees go, I like this guy. He's a good guy, man. I'm glad I work here. And then he tells his buddies, but he, from his last job, dude, my new boss treats me so much better. And then next thing you know, anytime you're growing and need to hire, you just got a line of people who want to work for you. And the more you tell the truth and the more you treat people right, the better it gets. I just think that there's a framework there in these boring service businesses. And I think that I'm just not special enough to compete with Mark Zuckerberg or some Russian quant doing trades. I'm not like, I got a day trade against some, like some genius from MIT. Like I'm just not that special. But if there's 8 roofers in my local market, I can be top 2, man. Like I can't win Miss America, but I can be the prettiest girl in prison, bro. Like where I take my talent is going to shape my outcome. So I take my talent where it's not that great. And I actually adore the people in the trades. I think they're incredibly bright, but I do think there's a difference in serving your local community where you only compete against your community versus these other careers people pursue where they got to, if you're going to be in online marketing, you're going to compete against the whole world. Some guy in the Philippines will do it for $1 a day, and you're just not that. It's hard. So I just think finding a niche that's geographically constrained, that rewards good behavior and can be built on some character and integrity. It's a nice framework to keep an eye out for if you're trying to figure out what to do with your life.
It's well said. Now, Jason, how does someone start working on the way they're being, as opposed to, you said it's not necessarily the how, it's who you're being. So how would you begin to tell someone to work on that? Because as you said, if you're being a good person, a kind person, people like to work for you, like other opportunities come from that. But how does one work on that without looking at the hows?
Yeah, what a great question. I mean, the answer is like so much deeper, more profound than I could answer. But like, if I tried to come up with a little piece of an answer to a broader question that requires more wisdom than I have, I would say one of the things that has served me in that vein is to really evaluate my relationship with myself and how I measure success and failure. And what I mean by that is when people will be like, I want to start a business, what should I do? And what they mean is, what kind of business should I do? What action should I take? And I'm always like, well, I don't know. What's your relationship with yourself like? And they're like, what does that even mean? And it's like, well, do you beat yourself up when you make mistakes? Like, what do you think about yourself? Do you think you're awesome? Do you think you suck? Do you think you're smart? Do you think you're dumb? Do you need other people's approval? Do you not? Are you crippled by your mom's opinion of you, or are you independent? There's all this stuff. And what I found is, like, for me to improve my way of being, I first have to see myself, because I just can't fix what I can't see. And in order to see myself, there's just a level of, for me, if I could just state a personal belief system, is like, I just have to have some divine sense that I'm a child of God and that it's just the whole point. The best way I understand Christian theology is that we're destined to fail. It's baked into the system, and that like a loving God is planning on us and banking on us failing, and that we're just supposed to fail forward in some meaningful way. And so if I can just remember that I'm just alive for the first time, and that I'm just don't know anything. Oh, I just did a little thing for the YouTube listeners that I made a hand gesture that made fireworks go off in the background. But if I can just remember that it's okay to suck, and that I'm supposed to suck, and that of course I suck, and I've never done this before, then I can look at myself honestly, but not critically. And if I can look at myself honestly, but without shame or criticism, oh my gosh, I can absolutely transform everything about my life. But if I just am like, oh, Jason, you tried to do 8 sales calls today and all I do is just beat myself to death with all my mistakes, then I'll do one of 2 things. I'll quit because it's too painful, or I'll just be like that delusional guy who thinks he's the best. Like you end up with, if you can't look at yourself honestly, you either got too hot, inappropriate level of self-esteem. either delusionally high and you just compensate by saying you're the greatest, or like cripplingly low by being like, I'm a loser. And you just got to start by being able to look at yourself accurately. Because honestly, I just believe that all the intelligence of the universe is in you as a child of God, and there's nothing you don't know. It's just, can you get access to even the right scenario? If you can see reality as it is, your infinite inner wisdom can start unlocking really powerful transformational change. But it just never happens when you're like, I'm a great husband. What are you talking about? I'm a great dad. It's like, all right, well, I can't. If you can't have a relationship with yourself where you can say, Jason, I love you, let's look at what you suck at, and not measure yourself in what you suck at, but in your courage to look at what you suck at. If I can measure myself in courage and in self-compassion and insight, instead of in, am I objectively good, bad, or medium at this thing, then just, that's a fertile soil from which a person can grow. And if you don't have that, starting a business is just a nightmare beyond comprehension, because it's just, you're just going to suck so hard. You're going to suck so hard.
Business already has baked into it more failure checkpoints than you said this world does. But Jason, to your point, how would you describe your relationship to yourself today?
Dude, honestly, I feel like something's happened in the last 18 months, and I'm 39, where I think I actually am like proud of myself for like the first time in a substantial, meaningful way. You know, the pie chart was never all one color. It was never all great, all bad. But I reached some tipping point in the last 18 months where I'm like, I'm proud of me. I think I really tested the limits of how much I can beat myself into accomplishing. You know, like how far can, oh, I'm not valuable, you know, I'm a loser unless I this, I'm dumb unless I that. Like, I've really tested the limits of, you know, how far I can go to the whipping hand to create a beautiful life. And a different story for a different day. I just reached the limit of that methodology and just in desperation just tried like rigorous self-compassion. And I also just like who I am. Like, this will sound however it sounds, but like, I'm a nice person, dude. Like, I woke up today and I taught a Bible study class they don't pay me for. And then I took a call with a guy who wanted some advice about life. And then I'm gonna go be with my kids. And I'm like, if I wasn't me, but met me, I'd be like, I like that guy. I'm like, you know, Jordan Peterson says, if you want to have self-respect, do things you respect. Like, at some point, I'm proud of me, but the process to get there was to change my scoreboard from outcomes to inputs and just stop measuring myself in how much money do I make, how cool am I, how many friends do I have, like all these things that are a little teeny bit in my control. Like, I can make more friends through my own choices and I can make more money through my own behavior, but I'm not 100% in control of that. When I started measuring myself in courage and willingness to try and in self-compassion and in kindness and in integrity, like these things are total inputs in my control, I just started to realize that whatever failures I had, like they were offset by like these wins. I'm a courageous person in my business. I've been brave. It's hard. It's hard to put yourself out there and be like, this is my best attempt to build something good. And then the market's like, we're not impressed. I'm like, that's my best effort, bro. I tried really hard. It's really hard. So I'm proud that I've not quit. And you know, my favorite quote's the man in the arena. I'm so proud that I've got in the arena and gotten roughed up and not quit. It's, you know, with age and wisdom, I've been a little kinder to myself. And I've also been proud of my ability to hang in there when it's hard.
Yeah. See, what listeners may or may not know, I'm sure they have a sense of it after listening to you for as long as we've been talking. On paper, I don't know the insides of your life, like all of the details, but on paper, Jason is successful. But I think what's beautiful to hear you say is that in your own head, you're a good guy to you. And I think that's one of the healthiest things we could ever hope to achieve, is to look at ourselves and knowing all that we know about ourselves and be able to say something similar to what you just said, to like, you know what, I'm proud of what I've done. While I'm not perfect at this or that, blah, 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 or not, but it's like, all in all, hey, I'm not a bad guy. So you said it took you time and energy to get to that place though. Backtrack, I don't know, 10, 15 years. How would you have defined your relationship with yourself? Is it different?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I would describe the 21 to 35 stage of my life, those ages, as like a duck that looked calm on the surface, but his little feet were just freaking, you know, furiously under the water, like in sort of desperate, angsty, anxious, trying to be enough, trying to be smart enough, trying to be cool enough, try to have the right friends, try to make enough money, try to live in the right neighborhood and do all the things, and also be spiritual and be kind and be a great husband and a great friend and stay in great shape. And this sort of searching for enoughness that God bless my insecurities. They really built me a great, like heaven forbid I loved myself earlier. I may not have all this great, I may not have such a comfortable retirement ahead of me. It's like, I honor the gifts that it's given me, but I would say 21 to 35 was a lot of good behavior with poor intention, trying to serve so that God loves me and trying to make money so that people think I'm smart. And like, listen, man, like I could have chose a worse strategy, for fulfillment. Some people use like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I tried to serve in my church, make money and build a cool business and be nice to my kids and wife. But it felt like it was coming from an anxious place, like a searching, a reaching and not quite grabbing, like a place that was really painful and exhausting. And even more painful and exhausting because of how good it looked from the outside in. It just didn't look like, if I complained, it felt like people would be like, you're an idiot. Like, if you're not happy, you're a moron. Like, you have a beautiful wife, great kids, great business, like free time, good friends. It's like, I just felt stupid for not being happier, but it was all right on the outside and really difficult on the inside.
Well, I hope, I can't speak for all of our listeners, but for myself, hearing you say that gives me some sense of accomplishment that, like, in the middle of some of those pieces of life where it is strugglesome, where it is, you're maybe doing things for the wrong reasons, but you're trying your hardest and it's maybe not piecing together. There is another side of it. If you work as hard, because Jason, what I've in the conversations, I mean, you and I have spoke half dozen times. We had a weekend we were spending together on a mountain, but like, you occur to me as a guy that's willing to do the work, like willing beyond most people's limits to do the work, to put in the effort, regardless of the outcome. And that, I think, is maybe the key that I'm hearing from you in context, is that maybe you felt that way, but the work was still happening. It's different when you feel that way and the work isn't happening. The effort isn't there. It's a lot harder.
Yeah. I have a friend who's like, we know each other all our lives and we have a similar emotional disposition. He's like, why do all your insecurities, like your insecurities left you like a happy married millionaire and it left me like divorced alcoholic? Like, why? Like, it was something in something at least channeled in the right direction for me. That's been a blessing. Well, I would say that one thing I got right was I've always just looked at life, especially in my career, is like, can I get a teeny bit smarter every day? I'm like really curious. I like novelty. I like new experience. And I kind of like uncertainty. Like, I feel like somewhere in my DNA, like 500 years ago, my ancestors just were wandering the forest looking for big game, because my brain is like, I'm always on the lookout for a win, and I kind of like when I don't know what's going on. I kind of like the uncertainty, and I just wanted to get a little bit smarter every day. And so I don't know where this blessing comes from in my life, but I'm not that married to the outcome in the short term. I just really a believer that if I get 1% smarter enough days in a row, like I just can't end up anything other than successful. And so once I changed my scoreboard from, do I look smart? Do I look cool? Do I look rich? Do I look successful? To a more meaningful scoreboard of like, was I brave? Was I courageous? Was I kind? Was I honest? Was I kind to myself? Then every day I can come home and be like, yeah, dude, like, I don't know when it's going to tip and I'm going to have the life I want, but like, I was always able to sort of like, just be stoked that I was getting smarter all along the way. And so I became more detached from external outcomes, and that kind of freed me up a little bit, or at least kept me having enough joy in the journey to stay in the fight.
Yeah. Speaking of intentionality, what is your intention for listening to this episode? Are you simply passing the time, or are you here because you truly want to improve something in your life? The way we act is a direct reflection on what matters to us. So right now, while you're here, take a quick moment and rate this episode, or leave a quick comment. Pulling your thoughts into words is powerful, and it turns passive listening into action. When you act on your intention, that's where change happens. Your rating, your comment, your share, they're not just clicks. They're a signal that what we're building together matters, that conversations like this deserve to grow. Each action helps this message reach more people who are looking to live intentionally. And no matter if you're listening to this show on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or any other podcasting platform out there, if you scroll to the bottom of the page or you go to our show page, you can easily rate and comment. We pull your comments and actually put them into our show. And it's another way that you can tell the algorithm that intentionality really matters. It takes just a few seconds, and it creates a bigger ripple effect than you might realize. I created this show because I wanted to help people find their way, find the intentional way. Now, you said 12 years ago is when you started implementing this 50-year-old birthday party scenario. Is that
Yeah.
about when things started to change, or has that been more recent? The scoreboard, changing the scoreboard.
Yeah, that is when it started to change. Because I had this real blessing when I was young that my dad made a couple $100,000 a year. So like way above average, but not like generationally wealthy. Subsequently lost it all in the downturn. So I got like, there's no inheritance cooking for me at the moment. I believe in my dad. If he's listening, I think I'll probably, he's great. But I had this really unique upbringing where my dad was like totally successful, but first generation successful. And so I wasn't spoiled, and he was just humble, awesome guy. And he kind of just, when I was young, I learned two great things from this experience having a dad who made a couple $100,000 a year. And the first lesson was, my dad's like, hey, I have a standard diploma from Snowflake High School, like grew up in a town of 3,000 people, no network, no connections. And he's like, just believe me when I tell you that you're smarter than me and you're more charismatic than me and you're more everything than me. And one, I don't think many people get that from their parents. But if anyone listening is a parent, give that to your kids. It was like, my dad wasn't trying to pump me up. He was genuinely telling me that he believed me, or that he believed in me, and I just believed him. So when he said, dude, I make a couple $100,000 a year and I don't know anything, you're at least 5 times smarter than me, you'll be fine. And I just kind of believed him. I'm like, yeah. I kind of was like, yeah, that makes sense. I agree with you. I didn't think I was smart, I'm like, yeah, I do have a bunch of cool friends and leaders that he didn't have growing up and stuff. Like I have every opportunity to thrive and succeed, including a dad who can coach me. So like, that makes sense. So I had a confidence that I'd always be able to provide for myself and my family. And I also got this experience that, my best friend's dad made 50 grand a year and had 8 kids. And my dad made a couple $100,000 a year, and we lived in totally different houses in totally different neighborhoods. And I was either at my house or his house, and we just both had families that loved each other. And it like made zero difference that his family made 50 and my dad made a couple hundred. Like it didn't change the love. It didn't change the energy. All of those 8 kids turned out amazing. They're really great people that the parents are super proud of. So because I had enough money, I grew up around enough money to know that money didn't make you happy. And I grew up with enough confidence in my ability to make money that I never thought that money was going to solve any of my problems. So that's a long way to say that a healthy detachment from money freed me up to just want to get smarter and learn and pursue other things. And so it gave me some space to not have money be the scoreboard for me, and that 50th birthday activity really allowed me to start getting curious about, well, if it's not money, or if I believe that I'll always make enough money to provide for my family, what would be the next most important thing to get from the 40 hours a week I spend in my job? And so I just was really freed up to explore all the other really beautiful, meaningful things that can come from work, besides just putting food on the table, which I just, for better or for worse, just kind of figured I'd always be able to figure out one way or another. And if I didn't do a great job, who cares? Money doesn't make you that happy anyways. I'll make enough.
That's a beautiful sentiment. Obviously, there's honor in it for your father and your family. Jason, what would you say to the person who is struggling, that has a hopeful vision for themselves, that whatever it is, and even if you have them change their scoreboard, but what would you say to the person that's kind of in the middle of a rough patch, something that's strugglesome? How do you help that person still use the principles you've talked about, even though they might be feeling a little down and out themselves?
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for asking me that. I've been told that sometimes women, when they get older, they forget how terrible childbirth is and how horrible it is to have a newborn. So they talk to newborns like, oh, it's so fun. And then the new mother's like, I'm gonna kill you, dude. Like, how dare you underestimate pain, And so I'd hate to be that person who underestimates the pain of struggling to provide, or not being able to provide, or not being sure that it's all gonna work out or not. And so what I'd say to that person is like, I don't believe my Bible study class, these teenagers, we just talked this week about, does everything happen for a reason, or is it all part of God's plan? And I'm not smart enough to know the answer, but my opinion is no. I don't think everything happens for a reason. Like, I just think that things happen. And then once they happen, we have an opportunity to do something with it, powerful or not powerful, useful or not useful. And if you're struggling, you're in a spot that doesn't work, that isn't working the way you want, I would invite you to make it meaningful with your approach to it. I don't think I can help but use spiritual language as I kind of articulate what that means for me, but I think that everything is sacred. There's this great Catholic Franciscan monk named Richard Rohr, and he has a book called Everything's Sacred, another book called The Universal Christ. And his basic premise is, Christian or not, there's kind of two philosophies. Albert Einstein talked about this. Either everything's sacred or nothing is. Albert Einstein said either everything's a miracle or nothing is. And there's really no in between. And so if God created the world, he created all of it, and he's in all of it. And so I just broke down the boundaries between my spiritual life and my business life, my family life, my social life. And I just tried to live as if everything is sacred. And so when I try to imbue my life with the sacred, it just opens up a beautiful set of questions for me, like, how could this be part of my hero's journey? Or what could be a way that 10 years from now I look back on this as a blessing? And not to, I don't like people like, this will be great. This is a blessing. One day you'll be so glad that, I'm like, I'm not going to be glad that my wife had a stillborn. I just don't care how long I live. It's always going to be the worst thing that Kate Bullard, this awesome person, says she had stage 4 cancer and almost died. And she said, I almost died. And she said, I had the most profound spiritual experiences you could ever imagine. I was loved in a way that I could never imagine being loved. I was served in a way I could never imagine being served. I felt close to God in a way I could never imagine being close to God. And it was totally not worth it. And I just love that. Like, if you're in a crappy place in your life, I'm not saying it's worth it. I'm not trying to silver line it. I'm saying you're already there and it already sucks. So why not try to infuse it with the sacred? And my favorite quote is, and maybe I have 10 favorite quotes, but one of my favorite quotes is, every bush is a flame and only those that stop and notice take off their shoes and worship. And so, Moses saw God in a burning bush, and a bush is pretty unremarkable. It's quite similar to a crappy job. It's not that special. No one stops and notices it. I think they're in the desert. Like, it's probably an ugly bush, even amongst other bushes. But that's where Moses saw God. And Moses saw God there because God's everywhere. There's always something sacred about what we're up to. So if you're in something that sucks, I don't know. I would, if I was talking one-on-one, I'd try to see if they had a spiritual framework where I could convince them that everything is sacred, and to be curious about what might be sacred about it. Not to give it false optimism or toxic positivity, but to say, could I make this beautiful? Like, my baby died whether I make it beautiful or not. And so I try to make it beautiful, and it still sucks, but it's more beautiful than it would be if I was just threw up my hands in despair. And so if you're not in a good spot, I'd say, just try to be curious about what might be beautiful about it. And my mentor says, maybe the ideal isn't possible, but what's the best available thing? Yeah, you're probably not going to go from a nightmare to a dream, but is there a next best thing that's a little closer and a little closer? And can we move our way towards something better?
Yeah. Jason, are you willing to go here with me? What has been the hardest part of the journey for you?
Well, at risk of being like just terribly unrelatable or looking like a guy who's like humble bragging or something terrible, I would say that the worst thing that's happened to me is this, like, sort of all my wildest dreams came true, and then it wasn't that great, That's like, in the last 5 years, that's the worst thing that's happened to me for sure. Is like, I have a friend who said, the blessing that I've gotten that other people may not get is that I have the luxury of getting all the things I thought would make me happy, and I get to discover that they don't, and other people just have to take other people's word for it. But like, the most painful thing was to sort of the disorientation and the feeling of brokenness and confusion that came from 5 years ago being in a place where I had a passive income in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that took me 5 hours a week to work for. My dream house was paid off. I got beautiful kids. My wife's like stunningly beautiful and also really cool. I had everything that you could ever possibly want. And I was just like, I am the worst. Like, I'm not happy. Like, God is going to smite me for my lack of gratitude that I can't. What the F is wrong with me that I'm just not, like, I felt so selfish, broken, and guilty for not, it felt like I ought to be the happiest person in the world, because it felt like if anybody else, felt like other people would literally kill to have my life. And here I am, not happy. And it just was disorienting and frustrating. And it kind of was like, I'm out of moves, bro. Like, if the kids, if the wife, if the business, if the dream house, if none of this makes me happy, then I think I'm just going to be miserable the rest of my freaking life. Cause I don't know what else to do, bro. I got all, like shoes only
Yeah.
get so expensive. I bought the most expensive ones they have. It didn't do anything for me. Like it was really awful, to be honest. Cause it made me feel like such an asshole to not be happy. I felt so ungrateful, And also like nobody wanted to hear me complain about that. I felt like if my life fell apart, 100 people would comfort me, but I just couldn't figure out who to turn to to say.
Do you ever feel like people are like secretly hoping for your life to fall apart, Jason?
No, I just think that I'm finding this, I think people always connect with authenticity. So even as I say this, even though I just shared what I shared with you, I was so scared before I shared it that I'd sound like a jerk. But as I shared, I could feel myself just really feeling like I'm telling the truth. And I just know that when I tell the truth, other people go, oh, I just see a human being over there. So like when I find the courage to tell the truth, I know that that pain is pain and it's just whatever. And it's not a humble brag. It's really sucked. But I found that when I didn't articulate myself well, when I'd be like, oh, I'm just bored. Like my business makes lots of money. I don't have to do anything. Like when I say it like an a-hole, I sound like an a-hole, or when I say it unclear,
Yeah.
then people are
Mhm.
unclear on what I mean. They're like, is this guy like trying to humble brag like in some awful tacky way? But as I get more clear on like what over time, I really got in touch with what the pain was. And, as soon as I'm clear on what I'm going through, I think people, I don't feel judged anymore because I think I have a better sense of what's really real. And I think people always connect with what's really real.
Well, there's part of me that wants to at least come to that aid a slight bit, because the first time I met you, we were doing downhill mountain biking, like the world's easiest thing. The lift takes you to the top and then you ride down. Now, easy, there's like,
Right.
you could break bones, you could mess up, but it's just like you run and have fun.
Cardiovascularly, it was not a struggle. Yeah.
No, but one of the days midweek, you took off and climbed 4,000 feet on a
Like a
bike while the rest of
psycho.
us were, skating down, no problem. So
Yeah.
saying that, because I want people to understand, however you take what Jason says, I've experienced you as an authentic human being, and everybody has struggle. That's one of
Yeah.
the reasons why I wanted to point that out. I didn't know what your answer would be, but everybody has a struggle and we've got to work through it. And if you think that someone's on the top of however you define success and you think that there's zero struggle there, then you're wrong. Now, you might be right that people would change places with you in a moment, but there's different challenges that come from every level of the spectrum. And I love to bring it back to what you initially talked to us about, is just how you are in it and how you measure that scoreboard you were talking about, and how you are with yourself. I love that you have a relationship with yourself, and that rings true for everybody. If you can fit those things and work those things out in your life, that matters.
Well, and that's what's universal. And I think that's the gift that I want someone to receive in me sharing that what's been hard in my life is that like, uh, you know, some people struggle their whole lives thinking if they get to the top of some mountain, it'll be better. And I'm like, hey, I've been here. It's like, I'm still me, bro. I brought all my baggage with me to tell you, I'm still me. There's this great quote. Timothy Keller says, anything you put on the throne of God will not only let you down, but turn on you. And so, if we can hold God as the thing that gives our life meaning and purpose that we turn to for comfort and value, like whether, like as a general conception of God, well, then if you put something on the throne of God that isn't God and try to get ultimate meaning from something that can't provide it, it's just gonna let you down. And like, I just had the blessing of discovering that, one way, and some people discover another. But if you make, if you think money's gonna make you happy, then you'll learn that it doesn't, and it not in some neutral way. You'll learn it in some catastrophic way. If you think that if you're the most beautiful girl in your high school and you get all this self-esteem from being beautiful, just like, wait, bro, you're not going to be beautiful forever, and it's going to really rock your world. And if you're the best football player, then it's not just going to let you down. Like if you put too much value in that stuff, it's just going to turn on you. And I just had the blessing of discovering that the way I discovered it. And that's why the last couple of years of my life has been so beautiful, because it was like, all right, well, I'm gonna just put God there now. And God for me is I'm not the most spiritual person in maybe a traditional religious sense. I am also religious, but just God is like aiming for the highest good that I can do in my life. Like I'm just trying to like answer the question, if I when I die and meet God, what's like, I want to just be like, I did it. I did the best, smartest, most meaningful, service oriented Christ like I knew how. Like, what might that be? And can I just go aim at that? Because like money, success, status, the right friends, whatever, it just all kind of left me cold and indifferent and really stressed out. And so I was like, all right, I give up. And I tried spiritual perfectionism. I developed scrupulosity, spiritual OCD. That was a nightmare. I tried to get all my value from being not close to God, but being the best, most righteous person, which is different than being close to God. I've tried every which way to feel great, and they all just kind of suck. Like only aiming at the most noble endeavor that God can put in your soul is like the only thing that really just gives me sustainable, meaningful joy and happiness. And I was always flirting around the edges of it and crossing paths with it all along the way. My life was not some nightmare story that, that all of a sudden turned great, but I just incrementally am aiming my life more towards my highest and noblest good and a little bit less emphasis on the things that I'm discovering more and more with age and wisdom don't have the payoff that I thought they might at some earlier stage in my life.
Yeah. Jason, beautifully said. I appreciate your words. Is there any way that you would sum up the way to be? Because we've talked a lot about what's not, and you've hit at this same answer a few times in what we've spoken about. But how would you summarize the way to be happy, or the way to accomplish those big things that matter, recognizing that it's not the dollars or the cents, it's different? What would you say?
Well, I like this thing I heard the other day that life is a symphony of confusion with notes of clarity. So the first thing I'd say is like, who freaking knows, man? Like, it's really hard to be a human. I have no idea how to do it right. But so my life's like mostly like a symphony of confusion. But like these notes of clarity, the notes of clarity that I can discern are like that that I think that I'm a creature of infinite intelligence and capability as a child of God. And that, as the New Testament says, that the kingdom of God is within me and within you. And so I believe that whether you believe in God or not, even, I think it's a universal human principle that like feel called to something. And I feel like that feeling called to something is like a hint. And I just get a little step closer and a little step closer, and it's not revealed all at once. But the joy in my life has been trusting my own inner wisdom and not, you know, I feel like I've spent most of my life trying to appease. I just, if I could, here's how I'd say it. I had this incredibly profound spiritual experience maybe 10 years ago where I like dreamed that I was building this house and it was big and it was beautiful and it was amazing and it was going to be, oh, everyone's going to know I was rich because it was a bajillion square feet. And I'm building this house I'm in the inside and I'm little and the house is huge. And on the outside, my mom's there and my dad's there, my wife's there, and people from high school there, people from college are there, my, coworkers there. And everyone's telling me how to build the freaking house. And so it's like the house is Victorian on the west wing, it's modern on the east wing, it's colonial in the middle, it's, modern farmhouse in the kitchen. It's a freaking nightmare, because I'm trying to build the thing that everybody freaking wants, and I'm trying to please everyone. And it was exhausting. And the only freaking room in the house that I liked in this vision was like I built myself, this is bizarre, like an in-ground coffin. Like it was literally like I
Oh,
opened up a
wow.
little hatch like in a pantry, and it was like 7 feet long and 3 feet deep. And when the world, all these voices and opinions got overwhelming, I'd like go in my little like panic room and I'd close the latch and I'd just be alone. And like the only time I felt peace was when I ran away from the world.
Hmm.
And just the absurdity of this thing of trying to build the thing that everyone would love equally as my life goal was so absurd, but well-intentioned. I wanted to build the house that my mom wanted me to want to build, and I wanted to build the house my dad wanted me to want to build, and my dad wanted to do a business with me, so I wanted to want to do a business with my dad, but I actually didn't want to. And I was trying to do all these things, and I was miserable. And in this dream, um, I somehow find myself outside of the building, outside of this monstrosity. And, Christ shows up. And, you know, like, you can believe in Christ or not, that's totally fine. The story works either way. But for me, Christ shows up and he just looks at me with this like perfect blend of knowing, compassion. He did not say a word. He just looked at me and like looked at the thing I'm building and looked at me and was like, like, gave me this look that was like, yeah, man, like, and I interpret it as like, that's nice, you know, nice work. That's nice work, bro.
Jesus was
Like,
sarcastically, this is great. I'm sorry.
no,
I'm not trying
it
to
was
make
like
fun.
this perfect mix of like incredible effort. I don't think you need me to tell you terrible execution. Like, you just built the world's best stupid thing, you know? Like, no one's worked harder to build something dumber, you know? Like, but like, it didn't sound sarcastic. Like, that's why Christ didn't speak, because it was like, I can't even put language to it without me sounding sarcastic, but it wasn't. It was like, he honored, like, it was just like, I felt like,
Yeah.
what an F, like, no one can build like you, bro. Like, that's the biggest dumb house I've ever seen. Like, I was, you know, like, it was the most impressive, stupid thing he's ever seen. It was like the vibe he gave me, and he meant it as a compliment, you know?
Yeah.
But he also was clear, like, in loving. Like, he's like, he didn't even need to tell me, like, this is dumb. This is not it, you know? And so I got a tool belt on in my dream, you know? And so Christ, without saying a word, just was like, like, he just kind of put his hand out, and I just put the tool belt in his hand, you know?
Yeah.
And again, he didn't say anything, but the vibe was like, he was like, I'll handle it. I'll figure this thing out. Like, he just kind of like, oh, you go, bro. And he just like, and then the dream ends, like, with
Wow.
no clarity on what to do next, other than don't do this thing where you try to be everything for everyone with no inner wisdom and nothing but, you know, trying to build from the outside in. And so my advice is like, I believe more than ever that every single one of us is a creature of infinite intelligence, and that the kingdom of God is within you. And a friend that we both have says, what do you already know that you want? What do you already know that you know? Like, I think we already know what we know and know what we want and act like we don't, or don't have the courage to act on it, or put so much time into this building that's stupid that I didn't want to endure the sunk cost of walking away. And I had to really grieve all the effort I put into this dumb house. Like, I worked my butt off on this stupid thing that was going to collapse under me and made me miserable. And yet I didn't want to walk away because it meant admitting failure and starting over. And I just think that the notes of clarity I have in my life is when I just ask a question that's like something like, what would I find beautiful and meaningful?
Yeah.
What would I do if nobody had any opinions? What would I do? What would I do? What do I already know? What? And then people say, well, I don't know. That's the problem. It's like, yeah, you do. Stop it. Yes, you do. You already know. Like, that's why I love this question. What do you already, you know, my buddy Chris Smith would say, what do you want? And everyone would say, I don't know. So he got sick of asking what they want. He'd say, what do you already know that you want? Well, a better marriage. Okay, then why do you say you know what you want? You know what you want. Like, I just believe that we know what we want. And when I get as close to a direct connection between me and what's most divine and highest and best inside of me, that's my partner and I, our goal for this 2025 is to just do what's highest and best, just do the best thing I can do, and to only take advice from my own inner wisdom and from God, and just follow that path, you know what I mean? And just know that the whole point is 99% of it's just a symphony of chaos with just brief notes of clarity. And that is not a sign that it's wrong. That is the game. The game is not like, I'm confused, but successful people are not confused. I'm poor, but wealthy people are, you know, or I'm poor and confused. Wealthy people are just wealthy and confused. We don't know. No one knows what they're doing. We're just trying to listen to that thing that's divine and highest in us as we move forward.
Jason, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here to share your wisdom, to share your insights. I laugh at the way you explained what happened in your dream. I wasn't trying to laugh at the outcomes, but the way you explained it,
No,
you
not
had
at
me in
all.
tears, dude. So I appreciate all that we've learned. I'm looking really forward to the feedback I get from our listeners from questions, and I hope that they'll post them. As a reminder for those that are listening still, post a comment or question inside of whatever platform you're listening to this to, so we can understand what you want to know more. And then maybe I can get a follow-up conversation with Jason here. But dude, thank you for taking time in what you're up to share your wisdom and to help everybody else find a way to live intentionally.
Yeah, man. Albert Einstein says, when you know something deeply, you can explain it simply. And clearly, I don't know anything deeply because I got to try 7 analogies to get a point across. And so, the audience will have to forgive me for having to walk around the bullseye and take a while to find it. But it's been such a pleasure to be with you. It's so fun. I love who you are and what you're creating in the world. And I'm like flattered and honored that you'd want to have me on. It's been a pleasure talking with you, man.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
Yeah, man. Talk to you later.
Thank you for joining us on The Intentional Way. I'm Bryan Hatch, and it's been a true privilege to share this time with you. If today's episode has inspired you in any way, shape, or form, please subscribe, follow, and download our episodes. Your support not only helps us grow, it also enables us to bring more insightful conversations and exceptional guests right to you. Living intentionally begins with a single step, yours. So let's make the most of it. Until next time, seek intention by being completely present.